Hey guys, it's Alex from 7th Hour Films, back again with Merlin. Last time on Merlin, we had Aethusa, which is not a sneeze. It was actually the name of a baby dragon. And the events that preceded the hatching of a baby dragon was this dude came to town who had been friends with Gaius, presumably before the Purge, and he's a bit of a shifty dude, a bit of a sneaky, shifty dude, and he wanted to find the last dragon egg so that he could control the dragon for its power. And Merlin was like, oh, well, I want to find the last dragon egg too, but, to, let it be free, not to do whatever the hell you're doing. So, with that, Merlin, Arthur, and the Knights of the Round Table headed off and eventually found the temple, and then Merlin defeated the dude, and the dragon hatched from there with the name Aethusa, and he went off to be with Kilgara, and yeah, now we have 2 dragons in the world. And that was pretty much that. It was a good episode overall, so now let's go ahead and see what we're going to be doing in this episode. Of course, like every episode, if you want to watch my reaction, it is in the description and the pinned comment, because it's the exact same link. But if you go there, there is the link there where you can watch my reaction. This is due to copyright reasons, as I've said multiple times in the past. And you can go, you can watch it, you can hopefully have a good time. When you're done with that, you can pop right back over here for the discussion. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into this episode of Merlin. Here we go. Alrighty. Good episode. If anything, this episode is called, His Father's Son. If anything, it should honestly be called Her Father's Daughter. Because that's honestly what we got more out of this, So, yeah, that was pretty good. And again, it's like, with everything with Gwen, it's like, after all the episodes we had where, he would constantly say, it's like, no, when I'm king, things will be different, Like, we've had, 3 or 4 episodes with that. And then to have him just be like, no, it's not different. It can't work out. I'm sorry. It's not appropriate. And you could tell that was breaking her heart, So it is kind of odd. It's like, okay, well, she kind of came around pretty easily, actually, after a forgiveness, after an apology, he apologizes, and then she kind of forgives him pretty quickly, but at the same time, you almost have to think, she knew, honestly. It's like, she knew it would happen. She knew that he would come around, that this wasn't him, and that eventually he would be better, He would get better. You kind of have to assume that she knows. She expects that Arthur will get better, he'll realize, and even though it is still hard, and, she was still tearing up right there, when it happened, she still knew, okay, Arthur is who he is, eventually he is going to come around, so, yeah, you can kind of be like, I don't know, you can kind of, forgive the whole, yeah, you can kind of understand her coming around pretty quickly, too, him getting out of, pretty much, going back to her, so easily, but, yeah. But you have to understand, you have to think she understands, I don't know. She's best girl. She is so clearly best girl on this show. Gwen is best girl, Which is, we always say that for, anime and stuff. Oh, who's best girl? Which is just a funny term in general. But if we're applying this to other non-anime shows, she is definitely best girl of this show. So. Alrighty. Okay. Now I'm gonna go to the cast. Let's see. Stephen Hartley was Carlion. Nope, don't recognize him. Yeah, Lindsay Duncan was Queen Annis, and she was she was on Sherlock, and she was also on The Waters of Mars. So I recognized her name in the credits. So that was pretty cool. And then the fucking mountain, Darien. He was in the 2009 Sherlock Holmes movie. I wonder if he's like the big guy that Sherlock fights with the discombobulate. Looks like he was in Deadpool 2. He was in Pacific Rim. He was in 300. That makes sense. That I don't really recognize him per se. So okay. Well, that's pretty much that for our weekly Merlin looking at the cast list. So yeah. All right, we can go ahead and hop right into the notes. The first thing I wrote down is strength/treaty. So you can definitely tell, Agravain's doing his work to either turn him into Uther, which would destroy him because, he's not Uther, and that would sort of crush his spirit, I guess, if he did that. And he's also trying to, incite wars that could ruin Camelot, basically. I still don't... Okay, last episode... Was it last episode? Maybe it's 2 episodes ago. It might have been 2 episodes ago. I don't remember what the latest one... I don't remember what episode has just gone up to YouTube, or not this very moment, but the most recent one that went up to YouTube at the time of recording this. I think it was only episode 2? Yeah, it was only episode 2, because today's Thursday, so episode 3 hasn't gone up yet. But I think a couple of you guys mentioned that another reason that Agravain would hate Uther is because of his brother, actually. Because, we pretty much inferred immediately, like, we pretty much got it. It's like, okay, he hates Uther because of what happened to his sister, the queen, But it's also what happened to their brother, which apparently I must have just missed. The knight in season 1 that came back from the dead with Nimue, and Uther fended off with Excalibur. That was Agravain's brother. So it would basically be another brother-in-law of Uther and another uncle to Arthur. So that I completely... either I missed that or I just forgot. It's entirely possible either way, but I don't remember them saying that. So, and that's the thing is that, the first time that this guy died, it was Uther's fault. And then the second time he died, it was Uther's fault. So, that's more reason for Agravain to hate Uther. I get that. I really do get that. His siblings are basically his siblings were fucked over by Uther. And so he wanted to take revenge. I get that. I still don't understand why he has a beef with Arthur. Is it just cause he's Uther's son? I don't get that, especially with the queen. It's like, even if unless maybe he sees Arthur as, the reason his sister died, it could be that, But honestly, you would think it was like, oh, well, I need to protect this kid because, despite whatever the circumstances and everything, it's like, this is still my sister's kid, and I gotta look after him because she would if she was still alive, So that I don't understand. Why does he have such a beef with Arthur to the point that he's completely willing to, he's completely willing to have his nephew killed, by Morgana. I understand teaming up with Morgana to take down Uther. I don't understand Arthur. Maybe you guys can explain that, but I don't know. I don't fully get it. Unless maybe he thinks of Arthur as, like, part of the reason. Like, he also sort of blames Arthur. It's like, oh, you know, if you weren't alive, she'd be alive, you know? If it weren't for you, she'd still be alive, you know? But, I don't know. That's kind of a weak motivation, honestly. But at least it's some motivation. Anyway. Shit. Alright. Anyway, so we can go ahead and hop into the notes. The first thing I wrote down is strength and treaty. Did I already start the notes and I just like got onto a tangent? Anyway, yeah, strength and treaty are the first things I wrote down. So that was interesting. Well, first off, you know, just so this king just took some of his men to start invading Camelot. Didn't take a lot of men though. It's like it seemed like most of the army was left back home, you know. But that was interesting. Just this other king. Basically, you know, playing on, you know, Camelot in sort of a weakened state, you know? Because, you know, it's like they've said, it's like, you know, Camelot is sort of in a weakened state because we've had a transition of power, you know? The king that we had for over 20 years, you know, probably like 30 years, honestly. The king we've had for, you know, decades is gone, and now we have a pretty great prince, honestly, but he's still an unproven king. Which then, once you start thinking about that, it's like, well, okay, is he unproven? Like, I think he's, like, he took over a lot of stuff, you know, as the prince, so you would think everyone would be okay with him as king. Well, I mean, Camelot is, I guess. But technically, he's unproven to the other nations, or the other kingdoms, I mean. So yeah, that was interesting. We also had Merlin in the knight gear. That was actually pretty cool to see. He looked good. He looked good in like the knight armor. I feel like the knight armor looks the best with the cape on it. Granted, that's not always practical for combat, you know, but the cape really sells the look, makes it look amazing. But yeah, that was cool just seeing him there, even if it was just for a little bit, you know, as a diversion. It makes me wonder, like, you know, because they do the previews for the next episode at the end of each episode. So I'm wondering, you know, because I don't watch the previews, I'd never do that. I'd be curious if like they showed that in the preview from last episode, and so everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, what is Merlin a knight? Is that going to happen?" And it's just a diversion. So I can see them doing that. Anyway. But yeah, strength and treaty. We can actually talk about this friggin' note. So yeah, we had to have, you know, does Arthur do a show of strength, or, you know, or does he not? And that's the thing, is that Agravain sort of poisoned his mind on that, where it's like, you know, where it's like, okay, you have to show strength or the kingdom will fall, you know? Whereas, like, no, like, you don't have to build this reputation on fear or strength or anything like that. Like, you can, like, create this on compassion and hope and understanding and peace, you know? So, but that's the thing, is that, you know, Agravain is basically trying to make Arthur more like Uther. Now, granted, it's with the idea that, you know, that would destroy Arthur one way or another because he's not Uther, but that's the thing, you know? That's the thing. So yeah, that was interesting, you know, do you have a show of strength? You know, Uther would have killed him, and then he would have gone into the battle and probably would have won. You know, I like at the end, too, you know, when, after Arthur explains the trial by combat to the knights, Sir Leon is like, hey, you know, I'm pretty sure we can still win this battle. Like, we're all pretty positive we can win this battle. And Arthur's like, well, yeah, we can, but there's still going to be losses, you know? There will still be casualties on both sides, you know? So, yeah, you understand, like, that part of it, too. Excuse me. Anyway. So yeah, that was interesting. And you also have to think too, it's like, he did give this king a choice, He did give this king a choice, accept this treaty that we've created or die. And he chose to die, the guy even said, like, hey, I chose my death, not you. Which was actually a pretty interesting, like, way of putting it. Like, he chose his death, which is a way for, Arthur to... It's basically a way to clear Arthur's consciousness, as he says later. So, yeah. So, it was interesting, but obviously, it was not a good... It had consequences, basically. So, I wrote down bear alone. So that was also interesting where now Arthur is sort of... Basically, Arthur starts pushing away a lot of people, which, he basically starts pushing away people, and feels like, okay, it's his responsibility. However, he doesn't push away Agravain. He doesn't push away the knights either. It's basically like he keeps his court, but he pushes away his friends, and that is a problem. His friends help him keep him to his own standards, basically. So yeah, it's like he started to push Merlin away, and then he pushed Gwen away. So yeah, that was definitely interesting. And again, we had that one scene where Gwen and Gaius were talking about, he thinks that he needs to, bear everything alone, but he doesn't need to, but he doesn't see it that way. And you can already see Gwen knows what's up with him. It's like, okay, he thinks he needs to bear this alone, and eventually he will come back around, So, yeah. And that leads into the next thing, servant. So, man, it is a little heartbreaking after so many episodes where, it's like, oh, Gwen and Arthur, they're our big ship, I guess. They're our couple, they're the great couple, and, no matter what, when he's king, things will be different and stuff, Like, when he's king, things will be different, and it's like... And then he's king, and granted, things are different. I mean, things were different for a year, because pretty much after, Uther went into his whole thing, being broken because of Morgana, Arthur and Gwen, they were just, they were pretty much just dating and, out in the open, and they didn't care. It's like, what the fuck's the king gonna do? He's out, Arthur's in charge. Then Arthur becomes the king, and then it really doesn't matter, But, of course, Agravain, being the, douchebag he is like, oh, your image, the people really gonna want... Which, that's the interesting thing. I said this in the reaction. It's like, oh, they're not gonna want the king to be, with the daughter of a blacksmith who's a servant. It's like, motherfucker, we have the blacksmith's son is a knight of Camelot, a revered knight of Camelot. It's like, I don't know if people are necessarily going to think, oh, he's with, that blacksmith's daughter, he's with a servant. It's like, no, he's with the sister of one of the knights of the Round Table. Like, fuck off with that. Which, also, I just realized, they never brought the Round Table back. Like, it was at that castle and stuff, and we had that cool moment, but he didn't, bring that back to Camelot at some point. Like, they still have the freaking, long rectangular table. Like, that'd be cool if they had the Round Table there, Anyway, but yeah, so that was kind of, that was a little heartbreaking, for him to, and you can kind of see, he's holding back everything. It's killing him inside to have to say this to Gwen. But it's like, oh, after so many episodes of being like, no, things will be different. It's like, no, it's not different. I can't do this. I can't follow my heart now that I'm the king. Bleh. And it's like, all right. But you honestly have to know, it's like, she knew that he would come around after a while. He would come around and realize his mistake. So that works. And speaking of coming around and realizing his mistakes, he did regret killing King Carlion. He did regret killing King Carlion because it did lead to war, you know? And it would lead to casualties, so that's the thing. You know, he did start to come around to that. Agravain can't fully get to him, you know? But then it goes into the next plan, trial by combat, which is interesting. You know, it kind of makes you wonder, it's like, well, why can't all wars be resolved by this? Just a trial by combat, you know? But you know, once he suggested the trial by combat, it was all down to, you know, all the power was with Queen Annis, you know? The queen had all that power then because she could accept or deny the trial by combat, you know? So she, you know, the ball was in her court, basically. So, but that was pretty cool, suggesting a trial by combat. And some pretty, you know, high stakes, you know? Half of Camelot would be surrendered, basically, if the champion lost. And because Arthur is that kind of guy, he was the champion. He was the champion, so if he lost, he would have died, and Camelot would have been without a king. So, that was interesting. We also had the sword. That was cool. The cursed sword that, you know, she says, like, it has the weight of, you know, 1,000 ages or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, it made it impossible, basically, to pick up. So, luckily, you know, Merlin is still there. Luckily, Merlin was still there to help out. So that was good. And then the fight itself was pretty cool. And I did like, you know, they basically brought in the mountain. Or, you know, this really big dude to fight for the opposing kingdom. So that was pretty cool. And then we had Peace! Peace! That's a Phantom Menace reference. Anyway. But yeah, peace in our time, which was pretty cool. That, you know, because, you know, he said he does regret killing the king, and he hopes, you know, he doesn't fight for victory, he fights for, you know, peace. And I like the queen being like, you know what, there's something about you kind of give me hope for, you know, hope for our lands, you know. So that was pretty cool. Honestly, it is the beginning of uniting the lands of Albion, you know? Because that's the thing, is that Arthur had what Uther never did. He inspires that hope, you know? He's like Superman, you know? So that was pretty cool. And I did love, at the end, you know, basically telling off Morgana. It's like, you know what? You are honestly more like Uther than you give yourself credit for, you know? It's like everything that she does, like, you are a lot like Uther. And it's like, ooh, damn, that had to sting a little. Good. So yeah. That's pretty much all I wrote down. Really, really great episode. I really enjoyed it. And I am looking forward to the next one. So yeah. With all that being said, I'm Alex from 7th Hour Films. And I will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of my Merlin reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.